let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, probably there'll be some people that mosey in a little bit late. Don't even worry about that. They'll just come and find their way. We'll get them checked in. But you do have this folder. Nice fancy folder that we put together for you guys so that you can have some information to take with you. When you open the folder, you're going to see that we do have a home buying guide, 23-page. Tons of information. I'm not going to go through this because we'd probably be here for 6 hours. But it is a good resource. The way that it's designed, it tells you all the steps involved with the process. And then as you flip through the book, it goes into detail, every single one of those steps. Also, you got a blank piece of paper for those that are here, that if you need to write down any notes, write some questions, you have that available for you. And the way it works is if you got any questions at any given time, just raise your hand. Right? I have no problem answering questions.
Remind that to people.
And if you're on Zoom, then go ahead and just type the question. We have some folks over here to the right of me that are going to be monitoring that, so you guys can jump in. All right. So the only two sheets I want you to take out, because we're actually going to be using these today. The first one says the first steps of home buying. This is actually the syllabus. These are the items, the topics we're going to cover. There's 3 topics. And then when we get into that first topic, which I think is the most important one, is credit. How does it work? And how can you understand it so that you can cheat the system to get awesome credit? All right. So first things first. Got to make some disclosures because we are a licensed real estate company, brokerage in the state of Texas. And the law says that anytime you have a conversation with potential clients about broker services or even properties, you do have to disclose who you are, right? The minimum duties that we have to offer any person who decides that they want to be a client. And then there's some other things we have to disclose as well in another document called the Consumer Disclosure Notice. So the first thing I want to do is, let me go ahead and get this out the way. In your packet, you do have what's called the IABS. That's short for Information About Broker Services. Can anybody tell me what a broker is? What does that term mean, a broker? A broker could be in the real estate industry, could be in the automobile industry, could be in the mortgage industry, could be in the insurance industry. So a broker is no more than someone, right, who can help a person in a transaction. For example, when you're buying a house, you have a buyer and you have a seller. They're doing business together. They're the ones doing the contract. But not everybody understands real estate law, how to do the paperwork. So they will hire themselves a broker who will be brokering the deal. Okay. So for this example, we are real estate brokerage. So we broker deals between a buyer and a seller. Okay. So that's the basic terminology of a broker. It's someone that is going to come alongside someone, preferably a client, and they're going to help you in the process of a transaction because they have an industry-specific license. So they have the knowledge and experience to make sure that you have a smooth transaction and that it's going to also go in your favor. Okay. So in the state of Texas, we have 2 real estate licenses. We have a broker license and we have a sales agent's license. In the state of Texas, the broker license is the highest license that you can have in the state. Not every state has 2 licenses. We do, right? So in the state of Texas, you got to have a minimum 900 hours of education. Some of that is related to real estate, but you can have other types of credentials. Like if you went to college, me personally, I was in the military, so I got a lot of credits from the school I went to in the military, and it transferred over to my real estate broker license. You also have to been in the business for a minimum 4 years, have a certain amount of experience, and kept your nose clean. If you can meet that and pass a higher level test, then you can have a broker license, which allows you now, you can run a company, but more importantly, you can sponsor the second type of licenses, which are the sales agent's license. These are people that either are brand new coming into the industry and they need the guidance and the mentorship to make sure that they're doing the right thing in the name of your company. Or it could be people that have been in the business a while and they just don't want the responsibility of having agents underneath them, okay? So that's the difference between the two. But at the end of the day, a broker is ultimately responsible for every activity that goes down through his entire organization, himself and also his agents. Now, this is something that a lot of consumers in the state of Texas and across America in general, this is something they don't have an understanding of. When you reach a broker or a real estate agent, there's many terminologies for real estate salespeople. Unless you come into an agreement where they represent you, in this state, you are going to be a customer, right? Look at it as a free agent. A customer is, you can deal with 15 other real estate agents out there that can kind of help you, but none of them truly are representing you, right? You're like a free agent. So you have a customer who's a free agent, but then you have a client who says, I want to exclusively work with one real estate broker. This is the highest level of protection under the law that you're going to be able to get, okay? In our situation, we do not work with customers. We only work with clients. These are folks that say, we want to exclusively work with your company because we want the highest level of protection and the duties required by law that we have to offer a client. So that's what this is talking about in yellow. It says a broker's minimum duties required by law. And you can see it says a client is a person or party that the broker represents. So you become a client when you have representation from a brokerage. You can be an individual person or you can even be a company. That's why it says a person or party. Now, the benefits that a client receives that a customer may not receive is the 4 duties required by the state of Texas law, okay? And what this is bullet number 1, put the interest of the client above all other people, including the broker himself, his company, and even all his agents. That's what you call a fiduciary. That's what my man in the back was talking about. That's when you come to a meeting, you decide you want a fiduciary relationship, and what's going to happen is, as soon as you come into that agreement, the client becomes number 1, the broker and everybody else involved becomes number 2, right? That's what it means to put the best interest of the client above all others. Bullet number 2 says, inform the client of any material information about the property or transaction received by the broker. So there's 2 things that are written in there. Number 1, as a broker, real estate agent, salesperson, whoever has a license, if you're their client, anything that they know about that property, they must disclose it according to law, right? I'll give you an example. We had a builder that was building out towards Wayside. This is many years ago. And I'm like, why are your houses like $20,000 cheaper than the builder down the street? You know, and they're like, well, very simple. When our company bought the land, we got it at a discount because across the road was a landfill, but they covered it up. So nobody knows it's a landfill. So they got a discount on the land because of where it was located. So the minute that they told me that as a broker, I had to let all my sales agents know that, because if any of our clients wanted to go out there, no matter how good of a deal that house was, we have to let them know that that community was literally across the street from a landfill, even though you can't see it, right? Because we don't want to get in trouble in the future if one of our clients buys there, right? And a lot of people wanted to buy because affordability was going up and up and up. So to them, it was a good deal. But we had to explain why. And we don't want to be in a situation where we are held liable because we knew the fact that the location is what brought the prices down. Okay? So that's an example of the property. Now, the transaction, anything we know about the transaction, we also have to disclose. What does that mean? Sometimes when people are getting financing, and they're set to close. I don't know if you've ever had this happen before. You're in the week of closing, and all of a sudden the lender calls the real estate agent and says, hey, I got some bad news. And you're like, oh my God, what now? Yeah, we have an issue with the loan, right? I know during COVID, this happened a lot. The lender would call the employer and say, we need to verify employment. And there's a form that the employer has to fill out. One of the questions says, what is the likelihood that this person is going to remain gainfully employed? A lot of the supervisors and HRs are like, we're about to let them go next week, but we haven't told them yet. That happened a lot during COVID, right? So because my ears heard it, right? And I know how that is going to affect the transaction, we had to let them know, right? Mortgage companies don't like giving bad news, right? That's why you never see them in public. They hide, and then the builders always want to try to blame us if something goes wrong, right? So that would be an example of we knew something about that transaction that wasn't going to be favorable to our client. So we needed to let them know, okay? Now, the third bullet is answer the client's questions and present any offer to or counteroffer from the client. What this simply means is you're going to enter into a contract to make a sale, right? Most people buying a home have never done a residential contract. Most of them have never even seen a contract. So it is our responsibility to prepare the paperwork and make that offer, even if your offer might be a little bit crazy, right? You want $100,000 off of a house that's $110,000, right? So we'll say that's crazy, but we'll go ahead and do it, right? And then if we get pushback and they want to make a counter and you want to make a counter for $90,000 off, then we'll go ahead and do that, right? We'll advise you, probably you shouldn't do that, but as it says, is we do have to make those offers on your behalf, okay? And when it comes to new homes, a lot of times people believe that you just got to pay the sticker price for what the builder is asking you to pay. That's not true because everything is negotiable in real estate. All right. Now, the last bullet point might seem kind of crazy, right? Because it says, treat all parties to the real estate transaction honestly and fairly. You would think that probably if we're professional with a professional license, we would probably already treat people honestly and fairly. There must have been some people not doing that, so they put it in the law, right? So with that being said, on treating people honestly and fairly, if you look up at the upper, I guess, left hand, the way I'm looking at the screen, you got a little house with some equal signs in it, or one equal sign in it. Can anybody tell me what that is? If you guys are on Zoom, you can chat in. Have you ever seen that before?
Yes.
You know what it is?
I think it's equal housing.
Equal opportunity housing. And there's another one similar, which is equal opportunity lending. So when we're talking about treating people honest and fairly, there are 6 protected classes when pertaining to working with clients in real estate. It could be sexual, orientation, family status, it could be ethnic background, it could be religious belief. When you work with a real estate brokerage, right, we are not supposed to violate or discriminate against any of those classes. And our clients, if you do it, then typically we got to kick you to the curb because we don't want to be involved, right? Because that is a serious law, and there's even other laws outside of real estate under the Civil Rights Act that we just don't want to take part in, okay? And you notice when it talks about honestly and fairly with all parties of the transaction. So when you're using a real estate broker and you're buying with a builder, you got your inspector, you got your mortgage people, everybody included as part of your transaction, right? They're going to be involved with the same type of guidelines, okay? So if any one of our clients feels that any person that is part of their transaction is discriminating in any way, we have been trained on these things to be able to handle it, okay? So now, right here in this yellow part right here, this will answer the question, well, what does it take to become a client, okay? It's no different than if you go hire an attorney, right? You just don't hire somebody on a handshake, right? They're going to draft up a contract and they say, you're going to retain me as your legal representation. It's the same thing in real estate. Right here it says in the law, the broker becomes the buyer tenant's agent by normally or usually agreeing to a written representation agreement. Okay? So it's nothing more than a contract between you, the client, and the broker. That's it. So once that is put in place, you now have representation from your broker. Now, on the very bottom of this form, for full transparency, the state of Texas, we can kind of zoom down a little bit on the bottom of this form. Scroll down. We're going to have to put who the broker is because you got to know who you're hiring, right? So if you operate as a company, right, you have a company and you have a company license. An individual person can't operate as a broker without a company name if they choose, right? So we have a company. Every company has to have one person who is ultimately responsible for having a broker's license so that if something goes down, there's at least one person that's going to be held accountable. Okay? So in this situation, I'm the designated broker for the company, and then there's my broker license. Okay? And then you have some other areas in case you have a huge real estate company with thousands of agents, right? You need to know who is the supervisor of the real estate agent you're working with. Because if you're a broker designated and there's thousands of agents, there's no way you can manage 1,000 people. So what they'll typically do is have mentors and supervisors that they will group the agents under. And then you have the area for the licensee that's going to work with you as well. Okay, so let's go to the next document that the government wants to make sure you guys are aware of. This is called the Consumer Disclosure Notice. So now that you know who you're working with as your broker, in the event that something comes up that ain't good, that's bad, right? And you need to turn somebody in, this is what this document is for. It shows you, number one, when I say government, I'm always talking about the Texas Real Estate Commission, right? That's the government authority or agency that has the right to give us a license, and they also have the right to take the license away, okay? They have their phone number on here, their address, and then also their website. So in the event that you're working with, and you can see at the top, it could be real estate brokers, the real estate sales agents, inspectors, timeshare folks, and then right of easement type folks as well. We all get our license from the same government agency. So if you have an issue, you can reach out to them and you can file a complaint. Okay, and then they'll start an investigation. All right, moving on. Okay, the first steps of home buying. Now, we told you a little bit about what a broker is in general. We are a real estate company licensed in Texas, we have Florida and also West Virginia. And there's many companies out there, right? There's RE/MAX, there's Keller Williams, Century 21, Coldwell Banker. These are all real estate brokerages. What separates us from one another is how we operate in business, okay? So not every real estate company is going to be exactly the same. It's just based on what they're trying to accomplish. How we are more than just a little bit different. We operate with a vision and a mission statement, not to say that we want to sell a bunch of homes, right? We're not competing against the RE/MAXs and all these companies that are selling like billions of dollars, right? Our focus is dealing with specific groups of people that face challenges and issues when purchasing and selling homes, or simply people that just want to save money. Right? Like Mattress Mac, I'll save you money today, right? Yeah. So in our business model, because we want to offer a 5-star client experience before, during, and after, we've come up with unique programs that are unique to us. And we market these programs based on challenges that people may have when buying and selling. So for example, these home buying classes, the number one challenge for a first-time home buyer is simply this. They have no idea how to buy a home because they never did it before, right? And if they had someone like their parents that bought a home that could show them, they probably wouldn't be coming to this class. So education is a big part of our business model because we know that there's people out there that they don't have that knowledge. Even with the internet, there's people out there that are like, I'm on the internet, but everybody's saying different things. I'll say something that's totally opposite of what Dave Ramsey's going to say. So now they're confused, right? You got this guy saying one thing, but you got the broker owner of this company saying another thing. You know, I've been running for 20 years. He probably been running for 20 years. So they're like, I think they're both credible, but who do we believe? Because we have two different philosophies, right? So education is a big part of what we do. Some of our programs, for example, our credit enhancement program, we know because we have 20 years of data that the number one issue that's going to stop a person from buying is their credit score. And it's not because they're bad people, right? It's just they don't understand how credit works. Like how many people honestly could just change the oil on their car, right? You could, like how many people even know where to go and check the oil? I know I try to check mine on my Acura. I'm looking all over the place and there's no dipstick because it's an enclosed system. I'm like, when did that happen, right? So I'm not a bad person because I don't know how to check my oil, right? Yeah. So it's like, that's not how it is with credit. Unless you decided to study the 5 factors that make up that ultimate credit score, right? Then you're not going to know it, right? And nobody is out there voluntarily trying to teach it to you because people make more money off of people with bad credit than they do good credit, right? So there is no advantage for institutions to teach you, right? So the credit enhancement program is a program we've been running for 20 years. It's been on TV, you know, it's been in articles in the Chronicle and things like that. So we do have a track record when it comes to credit, and I'm going to teach you some of the things we know about it. First-time home buyer programs. One of the things that first-time home buyers always ask us, hey, I'm a first-time home buyer. What's in it for me, right? They just know that it's something that they're supposed to get. Well, there's a lot of stuff out there. It could be no money down loans. It could be low interest rate loans. It could be down payment assistance programs. There's all kinds of stuff out there, right? And sometimes it's not even just for first-time home buyers. You could be a second-time home buyer and benefit from some of these programs. Another program that we have that blows people's minds is our lease buyout program, which the lease buyout program, how that works is someone says, you know what, I'm looking at prices of homes online and I see right now that they took a dip during the wintertime, right? I like it. I wish I can buy it. The problem is my lease is not up until August. What happens to prices of homes in the summer? They go up. So you got a dilemma. It's like you got to sit there cringing while prices start to rise as soon as spring comes, right? So what about this? You sign a contract for rent. In your contract, there's what they call an early termination fee. You can terminate your lease early. It's written like all the lease agreements. But here's the thing, you just got to find out how much money do you have to pay to terminate early. Believe it or not, most of these lease, what they'll say is there's a set fee. Typically, it's like, I don't know, $800. But then it'll say something like, you also owe 80% of 2 months rent. So based on our data, most people, the amount that they would have to pay to get out of that lease, most of the time is under about $4,000 or $5,000, right? So now you have a starting point. So if this person has a house that has not been selling during the winter months and like, oh my God, I got to sell this house because I got to get on with my life. You know, I got to go get another house. I'm going to relocate. You know, I need to do something. It's just a matter of negotiation. Hey, my man over here will buy your house, but his lease is not even over till August, but he can get out of it for about $5,000. Let's make a deal. Come up with $5,000 so he can get out of it and buy your house and close in February, right? Home builders, they do lease buyout programs, right? They're building all these houses and like, hey, we got 30 houses sitting on the ground right now in the month of March. And you say you like the house today, you know what? we'll pay that $5,000 to get you out of that lease. See, nobody thinks about stuff like that. That's not really traditional real estate, right? Our company, we had to think outside the box because as you have a .com, which we are, newhomeprograms.com, you get thousands of people that reach out to you. And thousands of people got thousands of issues, right? So we're like, to stay in business, let's find out how to fix these issues. And that's what newhomeprograms.com is about. It's a real estate company providing solutions for all your real estate needs, okay? And as I said, we've been around 20 years. We actually started the brand back in 2004, offer a lot of money-saving programs. I'm not gonna go through every single one of them because you can actually get on our website, take a look at it, and whatever agent that you're connected with, they can actually explore those programs with you, okay? All right, so enough about who we are as a real estate company. Let's go ahead and get into the first topic. Topic number one, credit. Who can tell me what a credit score is? I'm gonna need the Zoom folks. I'm gonna need you guys. You're gonna have to.
They're not talking yet. We need some more chatting.
Come on.
Got 11 people there.
When will you ever be in a position to have a real estate broker, 20 years experience, and you can ask whatever question you want?
How you pay your bills.
Someone says how you pay your bills. So they said a credit score is determined by how you pay your bills, which that is part of how your credit score is calculated. But my question is, what is a credit score? What's the purpose of it? Because you know, the credit scoring system in America is an American thing. Most countries around the world do not have a credit scoring system, but we do. But what's the purpose of it?
To see how reliable.
To see how reliable. Okay, I will accept that answer. So, the simplest terms, a credit score is a risk factor, right? Your uncle wants to borrow some money, Uncle Joe. I'm like, I don't know, you family, right? So you go talk to some of your cousins like, hey, Uncle Joe's trying to hit me up for some money. Hey, has he ever borrowed money from you? Yeah, man, he did. He never paid us back. I wouldn't give Uncle Joe no money, right? So then he said, listen, Uncle Joe, yeah, I'm not taking no risk because it's a good chance you're not going to pay me back, right? So a credit score is a risk factor. So if you're going to borrow money from someone, it is going to be able to let them know what's the chances that you're either going to pay them back, not pay them back, or how you going to pay them back, right? You may not pay on time, pay late, you know, eventually you'll get your money, but you fighting with them to collect, right? That's why they got collection companies. So credit score is one of the most important factors when you go to buy a home, unless you're going to pay in cash. But I don't know too many people personally that got the money to pay in cash, especially because the price of houses just went up like crazy, right? So you're going to have to make sure you have good credit. Now, my question is, when I say good credit, what is good credit? Based on the credit scoring system, what score do they say is good?
7.
She said 750.
Yeah.
You said 7 something.
650 and above.
Okay.
750.
Okay.
Oh, good. You said good, not great.
You just create a whole nother category. So here's how it works. And then now we gotta clarify this because I just got off the phone with a veteran. And he says, hey, I want to buy a home with my girlfriend. She's got the good credit. I don't. But I got the disability income, right? So I had to stop him and say, well, what do you mean she got the good credit, right? Because I said on a VA loan, you could go down to a 550, 580, right? He said, what? I thought I had to have a 700, right? Why did he think that? Because based on the credit scoring system, for them, good credit starts at a 700, right? And as soon as you get to a 750, that's excellent. And then there's no super excellent. So it's 750 all the way up to 850 or 843, whatever scoring, that's excellent. So 700 to 750 is good. And anything above 750 is excellent. right? So there's another category that's called fair. So fair is going to be somewhere probably around 650 to about 750, right? So when people say, I want to buy a home, but I don't have good credit, they might be saying, I don't have a 700 credit score. My comeback is, you don't need good credit. You need fair credit, right? And even some lenders, based on other circumstances, like if you make $10,000 a month and you ain't got no debt, you've been working for 7 years, right? And you just had an issue because you went through a divorce or something, and you had to fight who's going to get the debt, and they didn't make payments until the judge says it's your debt, right? You could have a 580 credit score and still get a good loan because of compensating factors. So the first thing we need to clarify, and we got to reprogram in our mind, when dealing with mortgages, do not go by the scale that the credit bureaus go by. You can have fair credit, and based on their way of calculating, sometimes you can have bad credit. Now, I'm not saying a 400 credit score. At least try to keep it above a 580, right? Now, there's probably some folks out there like, oh man, I just got to hope. Because I've been trying to get a house, but I've been waiting for my credit to go to 700. So good news. So let's break it down. Let's talk about how credit scoring is calculated. Because once you know the math behind it, it's nothing more than math, right? It's an algorithm, but it's simple math, right? Really, it's just multiplication and some addition. My highest math was Algebra 2. I fell that and had to go to summer school, and geometry because I love shapes because it was more like art, right? I love art, but it's not rocket science is what I'm saying. So if you got a high school diploma, maybe even a GED, you're going to be able to figure this out pretty quick. So the first thing we have to do is we got to establish a baseline because there's 3 different credit bureaus, and each bureau, right, can be operating off of multiple credit software. Just FICO itself has 9 different versions. FICO 2 is for mortgage companies, right? You got your automobile FICO calculation, you got your credit card calculation, and then once you go outside of FICO, you got this new thing called Vantage 3.0. That's what Credit Karma uses, right? Totally different than FICO because when it comes to credit cards, they cheat the system, right? They give you more points because they sell credit cards, right? So the baseline on this, if you look up at the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see that we are using a credit range of 309 to 839. This is a TransUnion FICO model, right? So if someone says, well, that's wrong because I got an 840, right? You probably do. It's probably not the same FICO that I'm using up here, right? So, but this is just a baseline, right? You got to have a software that has a low score and a high score. And then what you got to do is just do a little bit of math. Subtract the low score from the high score, and it gives you what I call your spread. So in this situation, it's a 530-point spread, right? So the most points you can get, 530 points. So now it makes it very simple. You're probably thinking, how can I get all 530 points? That's it. So let's talk about how you can get it. So the first factor of credit score has a weight of 35%, right? So when I say weight, it means out of the 530 points, how important is how you pay your bills? It's really important. That's why it carries a weight of 35% of the 530 points, which comes out to be 185.5 points. So just by the way that you pay your debts, you can maximize 185.5 points, right? So that should be the first focus. When building your credit, right, or fixing your credit, it's go step by step. Learn each one of the factors and start with the one that you get the most points first. How you pay your bills is the easiest one out of all of it. Because all you got to do is what? Pay your bill, right? So if you know you don't have money to pay bills, don't get credit, right? Now, you might say, well, yeah, that sounds good coming from you, but I already had the credit, and then I lost my job. some issues happen. Life happens, right? Everybody knows that life is, you know, we can't predict tomorrow if it's going to be sunshine or it's going to rain, right? And even if we try to, we're probably going to be 50% wrong, right? Because, you know, we're not prophets. We don't know everything is going to happen, right? So if you have credit, right, and you fall on hard times, this is the thing that you need to know. Because just like we talked about how the software looks at good credit and excellent, but the reality of when you get a mortgage is different, right? Let's look at the billing cycle of credit. So when you have a credit card, you have a billing cycle. Let's say your credit card payment is due on the 1st and late by what? The 15th, right? That's what we call a grace period. So if it's due on the 1st and you pay on the 16th, are you late?
Yes.
You're late. According to who? The company. Are you late according to the credit bureaus?
No.
See, they on a different type of late system. They don't look at it being late until you 1 month late, right? So sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to have that money. My battery went out of the car. It actually did on my wife's car 2 days ago. I almost choked when they gave me the bill. I'm like, when the battery start being $317? I used to get them at Walmart for $59.99. They like, oh, it's a special battery. I'm like, man, it's a cheap Cherokee. That's an old one, right? So sometimes things like that happen, and you might not be able to pay that $100 credit card bill, right, on time. And you say, well, I can't pay it. It's going to be late, right? So you know what? I'll wait until the next paycheck, and then I'll end up trying to catch it up. But by the time that joker is already 1 billing cycle late, now you owe the last month plus the current month. So now you owe $200. And then you start to get in a hole, right? So that's how people think sometimes. Like, you know what? It's not a lot of money. You know, what are they going to do? Come and take my credit card from me, right? You know, what are you going to do, right? Cut it off? You probably ain't going to cut it off. But the problem is, because you went 1 month late, your credit score took a hit of about 40 points. Yep. Right? Now, you might say, well, you know what? I just catch it up. And that 40 points, it'll come back up a little bit, right? But here's the problem. When you get a mortgage, they don't want to see late payments in the last 12 months. So sometimes I got to tell people, hey, because you kept missing that $38 payment on this credit card, you missed that 15 one over there, you got 2 30-day lates just in 1 month, and then 6 months later, you did it again. So you automatically going to get denied for a loan. And the last late that you did, you have to wait 12 months to have clean history because you didn't pay less than $100 worth of your secured credit card bills. They're like, what? If I would have known I had to wait 1 year, I would have came up with the money, right? You go on eBay, sell something real quick, or Facebook, Marketplace, right? Sell something. So the thing is when you have the credit cards and, you know, car payments and things like that, everybody has issues in life. It don't make you a bad person, right? You just got to, you know, play with the cards you was dealt with. What you should do is reach out to those companies, right? And just be honest with them. Hey, this situation happened. My battery went out. If I don't go replace that battery, I can't work, and y'all ain't never gonna get your money back, right? They might say, well, that's logical thinking right there. We're gonna help you out because we want to keep you because you're honest and you want to do the right thing. They may give you a waiver for that money. Now, if they say they do, get something in writing, right? Because sometimes they can say one thing as a human, but their computer is a whole nother thing, right? And they always blame, oh, the computer messed up. I got a lady right now that got a letter from a credit union. You think a credit union will take care of its members more than if you went to a traditional bank. Their computer system, even though it took the money from her bank, it reported her late twice in the last 90 days. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, are you sure you didn't pay late? She's like, I promise you, I'll show you where it came out. In the credit union, I got a letter signed by the branch manager and they saying to the credit bureaus, it was our fault, right? These computers, they got a mind of their own, right? So the thing is, if you're about to miss a payment, right? It's okay if it's going to go past the 15th, right? You could probably work it out before it gets to the 15th, but don't let it go 1 month late thinking that, you know what, it's no big deal. You know, I'll catch it up, you know, I'll double up on that payment. Here's what a lot of people say. Well, my credit card balance is only $200. My payment is $15. I'll just pay the whole balance off next month. So I don't care if it's late because I'm going to pay it off as if they're doing something good because they paid it off. Credit don't work like that because it's looking at your habits. That's what it is, right?
There's a question.
Question online.
How many years after bankruptcy can you get a loan?
Okay. That is actually in our mortgage topic, but I'm going to answer it anyways. So it depends on the bankruptcy. So for regular folks like us, not business, right? They got their own bankruptcy. We got chapter 13 and we got chapter 7. Chapter 13 is you do make some money and have some ability to pay some of the debt. So what they do is they restructure your debts, right? And they put you on a payment plan and it goes through the court system. Once you've been making those payments on time for 12 months and you go back to the court and you get permission from the court, you can actually go ahead and apply for a home loan. That's a chapter 13. Chapter 7 is where you mathematically, you do not have enough money to pay your debts, and it's going to put you in a severe financial ruin. So what they do is they just discharge and dismiss all your debts. If it's a chapter 7, you're going to have to wait 2 years from the time that the court order is filed and they go ahead and dismiss all those debts. So 2 years after chapter 7, 1 year while you're in a chapter 13. So you might have a 3-year chapter 13 plan, but all you have to do is successfully complete the 1 year. And on another note, if any of these companies called consumer credit counseling reach out and say, hey, we're going to negotiate your credit cards, and sometimes they'll even tell you, hey, just stop making your payments because we'll be in a better position to negotiate. Don't ever do that, because when you get a mortgage loan, they look at that no different than a chapter 13. It's just you didn't go to the courts, right? So don't let these people trick you in thinking, hey, you don't need to file bankruptcy. We can do it as an advocate. And they always make it seem like that there's some type of nonprofit agency that's going to help you to remodify your debt, bundle it up in one small payment. That's exactly what a chapter 13 is. Okay. All right. So how you pay your payments. You either pay it on time. That's the best you can get. So if you're someone who has no credit at all, get some credit. I know Dave Ramsey's probably, oh, no, don't get credit. Get credit, right? Get something on your credit report and then just pay it. And then you're going to see your score shoot up, right? Because if you don't pay it and you get a 30-day late, you're going to drop about 40 to 45 points. And then if you go 2 months late, 60 days late, it'll keep dropping. Typically, when you're about 90 days late, 3 months, you'll probably be in the high 400s. And it's going to take you a quick minute to climb out of that. Okay? Now, because I did put Dave Ramsey out there, when I say go and get debt, right? I'm not saying go buy a car just so that you can build your credit, right? Because the more debt you get, those monthly payments tied into that debt could actually hurt you because it drops your purchasing power. So when I say get debt, it might be something as simple as maybe a secure credit card. You could sign up with a company called Self Lender, which is now Self. You could put your utilities on your credit, like your Netflix is classified as utility, Paramount Plus. You can get your T-Mobile, your AT&T. You can even have your rent added to your credit now. There's multiple things that you are paying on a monthly basis. Like, don't they check your credit when you get like Direct Energy and Reliant, right? They're willing to give you a service really on credit, hoping you're going to make the payment. But those payments, they change. So it's even more risky than a credit card, right? So that's why they check your credit. Those things you can add. And the reason you want to have a credit score, unlike Dave Ramsey saying don't get anything, is if you don't have anything on your credit, then you're going to have to get what's called alternative credit letters. These are companies that are willing to vouch for you, that say that you do some type of business with them. It could be like maybe you bought something from one of these pawn shops and you're making the payments and they're not reporting. Maybe you went to one of these cash and ride car places where they do the in-house financing. You show up and you make the payment, but it's not on your credit report, right? So you would have to get letters, and typically it's 3. You're gonna have to get 3, which is gonna be tough. But here's the other thing. If you have 0 credit score, then when it comes to interest rate, the algorithm is like, what rate do we charge? You think it's gonna give you the best rate? It's gonna give you the worst rate, right? So someone who has no credit right now, because that probably is gonna be a manual underwrite, right? Which means a human being is gonna take a risk, not the algorithm, right? You probably end up getting right now like a 7.5% on an FHA versus somebody has a 640 credit score right now will probably be getting 6.5, 1% difference in rate. 1% ain't a big number until you get that house payment every month, right? That could be the difference of about $100, $120 a month in your payment based on your loan amount, right? So in the long run, if you don't have decent credit, a good credit score, you will pay the price financially. And the whole point of not having to throw money away because you don't have credit, that's money you could be investing, right? So that's his whole concept, you know, save money, which is investing, right? So get a mortgage with the lowest rate to free up money so that you can invest somewhere else, okay? All right, number 2, revolving balances. This is 30% of your overall score, so it's 30% of 530 points, which means there's 159 points up for grab. That's a lot of points. So who can tell me what revolving credit is? You got 2 types of credit. You got installment loans and you got revolving. Let's talk about installment because it's easier one. Installment, you have terms. For example, you get a car and you pay 48 months. Those are your terms. You pay $500 for 48 months. That's 48 payments. You make that last payment, what happens to the account? It closes, right? Now that sounds good. Hey, I just paid my last car payment. Woo! Praise the Lord, right? But here's the problem. When that account is closed and you're not making more payments, then you lose out on factor number 1. So that's one way your credit score will drop, right? There's a second way. We'll get into factor number 3. But paying off an installment loan is going to hurt you in 2 ways. Revolving credit is, for example, credit card, right? They give you a limit, 1,000. You can charge it up to 900, pay it down to 0. Charge it up to 500, pay it down to 200, right? You can make it go up and down, up and down. Now, here's the trick with revolving credit. And this is one of the number 1 things that get people in trouble, right? When they're ready to buy a house. You see, with revolving credit, it's a mathematical mechanism, right? You charge your card up, guess what happens to your score? It goes down. It does not matter how awesome you were paying your bills for the last 30 years, right? If you charge that card up, your credit will drop, even if you never had a late payment in your life. Because the more you charge your credit card up and you start to hit up that limit, it's a risk. Number 1, what's the reason why a person gets a credit card? Why will a person get a credit card and use it?
Their money.
Yeah, most likely they don't have the money, right? Because why are you going to use somebody else's money at like what, 29%, 27%? You know, in a recession, they jack up the rates, right? Right? Now you might say, well, I'll just pay it off because I want to get the points. Okay, a lot of people do that, but a lot of people don't. That's why right now, in all of American history, credit card debt is at the highest it's ever been. Ever. But you know, during COVID, credit card debt was at the lowest. COVID wasn't that long ago, right? So why in a short period of time did we go from the lowest credit carrying balances to the highest? That really makes sense, right? There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Prices went up.
You're like, hey, I make $4,000 a month, so getting that $2.89 gallon of milk, you know, the $2.49 for a dozen egg, 18 eggs, right? And now a gallon of milk, $8. Yeah. Well, I live at $8 for a gallon. Now, see, I got 2 kids. I got taught, man, they go through a gallon every 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I ain't gonna lie, I pay about $1,000 a month in groceries.
oh, yeah.
And it's the eggs, it's the milk, it's the bread. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So we make a certain amount of money, right? And we get accustomed to our budget. Oh, okay, well, I can afford to pay this, but what happens when everything go up in price? Your income didn't go up in price, right? You didn't go make no more money. It's like the gasoline. We all experience that out here, right? It's like the gas went back up again. It's above $3 again, right?
Yeah.
So at the rate the gas go up, our incomes don't go up at the same rate, right? Gas go up, everything else goes up. So if you want to survive, you're going to put on credit. That's why credit is at an all-time high. In a recession, right, is typically inflation is one of the reasons why, you know, we go into a recession, right? It's like the economy is doing so well that they got to slow it down. And the only way they can slow it down is they got to jack up rates on everything, right? So when it comes to revolving credit, right now in the last 2 years, because we have a credit repair company, right? Everybody's maxed out. There's people, when I pull their credit, they at 105%, which means they over the credit limit by 5%, right? So let me show you how dangerous this is. That 159 points, that's up for grabs. It's also up to be lost. I tested this theory like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, right? Because I didn't believe this. I'm like, are you telling me that I could lose up to 159 points because I'm flexing my credit muscle by charging this card? It doesn't make sense, because if I'm a good person, I'm paying my bills on time, right? Didn't have no collection. Why would I get punished for using something that you voluntarily gave to me, right? You thinking I'm a responsible person. Okay, all right, let me charge it up. But why are you going to punish me, right? Am I not doing you a favor by giving you interest on a credit card, paying the annual fees? I'm hooking you up and you punishing me. So I said, you know what? I don't believe it. So I maxed out every single credit card I had. Remember when Circuit City was around? I maxed that joker out. Try to put a stereo system in my car, and you know, back when they had the flashy lights, got some subwoofers and all that other stuff in there. Got the little disc, you know, put in the back, and you got 12 discs playing on that thing, right? Bought everything, right? So I waited to see what my score did. Now at that time, my score was probably like a 720, right? I watched my credit drop. On one of the credit bureaus, it was a 598. The other two was barely like a 601, 602. I'm like, how in the world did it in 30 days? Because I waited for it to cycle. It blew my mind. But then I said, you know what? The algorithm says you could lose 159 points. I lost probably a little over 100, 105 maybe. But I said, well, their math is wrong. Because if it's literally, what does it say? 30%, 530, that's 159 points. I lost like 105. And I just kept thinking about it for a couple months. And then one time, because you know, I go back and pay those credit cards, I missed one. See, back then it wasn't that fancy, the online banking where you can have an ACH. It wasn't like that back then, like 15 years ago. I missed one. Or actually, you know what I did? I missed a payment or something like that. And when it did, it went over the limit, right? So I'm like, wait a minute. You could actually go over the limit on a credit card? That's how you lose up to 159 points, is when you go over the limit. That is a danger zone. And that's when your credit really goes screaming down, up to 159 points. So that's why I'm saying I've got people in the credit program that they're like 106%, right? So they over the limit. And then you know when you go over the limit, they got the over the limit fee. So that puts you even higher over the limit, right? So when it comes to credit cards, a lot of times prospects will come and chat with us. They want to sign up as our client. We give them an application for the mortgage. We run the credit, right? And we're like, listen, you had a 605 credit score. Did you know you could have actually been in the house like 9 months ago? And like, what you talking about? I'm like, you're carrying these high balances on these credit cards. And you know, when you own a mortgage company, you got the credit score simulator. So I can put in there, if somebody's a 605 and they carry 90% maxed out balances, right? I can put in the software, what would it take for this person to get a 640? And the software says, Capital One, pay off $500, right? Home Depot, pay down $200. It'll tell me exactly how much they need to pay on each credit card to get the 640, because it's all math. And they're like, are you telling me we could have had a house last year, but because we thought we had to keep using credit cards to build credit, it stopped us from getting a house? Yep. So sometimes we got to tell people, you know what? Just go out and pay these credit card debts. Let's wait 30 days for it to cycle. Now we even got a way we can cheat it. Just pay it off to zero. Wait until tomorrow, take a screenshot from your phone, and then upload it and dispute the balance on all 3 bureaus. They typically get around in 48 hours and they update it. And then you get an alert saying, hey, your score just jumped by 69 points, right? You ain't got to wait 30 days. Yeah.
Okay.
But let me tell you, they feel so bad because they're like, how come we never knew this? Because obviously, the industry don't want you to know. So let's talk about the industry. There has been a rumor ever since I've been in the business that in order to have good credit using credit cards, what's the balance that they want you to keep on your cards?
30%.
30%. Anybody else ever heard that lie before? Right? Where'd it come from? We just did a class yesterday, and somebody confessed, well, my bank that gave it to me told me to keep it at 30%, right? I'm like, man, they get bold, right? So let's talk about the ways that banks make money off of credit cards. There's at least 5 ways. Let's talk about it. Way number 1. Interest. What else? What was that?
Time frame.
That's it. Probably interest.
That's it.
Interest. What else?
Late fee.
Late fees. We already talked about what happened to my credit card when I try to see if it'd drop 159 points, right? Over the limit. All right. If you got not so great credit, what type of fee do they give you? Or you get one of those super fancy mega rewards card. What do they stick you with every year? Annual fee, right? That's just free money right there, regardless if you use the card.
Someone said overdrafts online.
Overdrafts, like late fee. And then there's one more that almost no one ever knows. They never get this. I used to walk into Best Buy and say, man, I'd like to buy that fancy 1080i TV. That's way before 4K, right? It was expensive, right? But man, they get me every time with this. Hey, you know you could have that right now. And we'll go ahead and put that $4,000 plasma, remember it's called plasma TV, and check it out. You got 0 interest for the first 12 months. Right. I'm like, how in the world do y'all make money if you ain't gonna charge me interest? Right?
Charge.
Huh? Anybody ever heard what's called a merchant transaction fee? All right, so let's talk about the mafia, right? Legalized gangsterism, right? So there's 4 organizations that got a racket on the money globally. MasterCard, Visa, Amex, and Discover. Any bank card that you pull out and any credit card, I promise you one of those gangsters is on there. They control the money, right? So the way it works is when you got that piece of plastic, there's going to be at least 2 partners, sometimes 3 partners on that card that's in the racket. You're going to have Visa, MasterCard, Amex, or Discover, right? They don't want to control the flow, but then you're going to have the bank, right? So if you got a Bank of America card, it's either a Bank of America MasterCard or a Bank of America Visa. Now, if you go and get a store card, then that's where the third partner comes in. For example, Walmart. Who's on the Walmart card?
Capital One.
Capital One is the bank, and then their other partner, probably Visa, right? 3. Now, here's what they do. Every time you process that card, you charge it, right? What's happening is that store, they're going to have to pay a fee. That's that merchant transaction. It could go up to 3%. So think about it. If I was a bank, I'm like, oh yeah, make sure you keep a 30% balance at all times on that card. I would probably groom you to be so afraid that every time you paid that car off, you're going to run out and buy something. Now, you might get tricky and try to pay it off to get the points, but here's the thing. I don't care because every time you swipe it, they get the money. Right? Now, many, many years ago, we were the first real estate company in American history to be able to issue our own credit card. That's how I learned the game. Because we had First National Bank of Omaha said, we want to break into the secure credit card market. Bad credit folks, right? And we want to come to Texas. So somehow they found us, came down, sent a delegation, looked at our office. I had to fill out an application with Visa. They had to vet my background. And First National Bank, a $9 billion private-owned company, said, let's do this. We were the first real estate company to issue the new home program secure credit card, which that bank made a killing because they was collecting $250 on every single person and turning around and lending that money to other folks that had good credit at high interest rate. And the way it worked is every time that card was issued, we received $25, right, from that deposit. And every time somebody swiped that card, we were on that card, so we got 1/3 of the revenue.
Oh, we're part of the market.
Yeah, we were. But here's what I did. I said, listen, when you get the card, it ain't about you using it, just pay it off, right? Because I don't want you to charge it up because that means your debt goes up and you qualify for less of a home, right? So they would charge it, they would pay it off. We never had to keep it at 30% because remember, if you get a secure card, let's say $200, $300, it is easy to charge that card up to 100%, which means you're going to lose 100 points. So we train folks, when you get that card, do not be carrying a balance because it will stop you from getting a house. So it was an easy way to get people's credit to jump pretty quick. We had this thing down to a science. Like the day you get it and you activate it, within 90 days, you will see a jump in your credit score. Okay? So the thing is don't believe in the 30% balance rule, right? Because they want you to carry the balance. But what I'm saying is even at a 30% balance, you could still be losing about 25 points with a 30% balance. At 25 points, it could be a big deal. If you have a 639 credit score, you could be looking at a rate of 7.25 right now on FHA or VA. You get one more point out of 640, right? It could drop to maybe 6.5.
So how you managing your activity? Are you just running a 30-day cycle? So you have some activity on the card?
Well, here's the thing. You could get a credit card, never even use it. Just activate it. You're still getting the same points as somebody who's out there using it. Yeah. I've got credit cards that I got that I'm like, I'm never going to use it. And I just keep it open. And I'll tell you why when we get to step number 3. Right? So, a couple things to know about how to crack the code on revolving credit. So, if we know that you lose points as your balance ratio goes up, let's say we have a $1,000 credit card and you owe $500. You're 50% balance. And let's say you don't have a dime to pay off that $500, but you need to jump a couple points really quick. What could you do to get that balance to drop without paying on it? $1,000 credit card, you owe $500, and you need to get that 50% balance down.
Another credit card?
You can call the bank and ask for an increase.
Credit line increase. You can get on most of the websites now once you have your credit card and just hit that button that says credit line increase. Capital One will ask you, what do you want your new credit limit to be? And you could say, I got a $200 card. I want my credit limit to be $750. Hit the button. They might come back and say, we can't give you $750, but we'll give you $600. So if you had a $1,000 credit card limit and you owe $500, and they go ahead and give you a $2,000 limit, now you're not at 50% balance. You're at 25. That's a big difference. That can easily get you another 20, 25 points, right? Or you go and apply for another credit card, because the way it works, it looks at all your balances across all your revolving credit and then all your limits. So if you have $500 on a $1,000 credit card, but then you open up another $1,000 credit card, you got $2,000 limit with a $500 balance. So you still at 25%, it drops it, right? You got your mom who has a credit card and it's a $5,000 limit, but she didn't use it. It's a zero balance. You can ask your mom to add you as an authorized user. So now her limit is added to your limit. Her zero balance is calculated into your balance. See how easy that is? It's just simple math, right? Okay, let's go on to point number 3. Length of credit history. This is one that if you understand how this one works, you can literally game the system also. But this one, it's not going to get you like 100 points, right? The most you can get is 79.5, right? Because it's only 15% of your overall score. But still, 79 points is a lot. So the way this one works, remember this word, open credit, open credit, open credit. They say if you say something 3 times, people will remember. I'm going to say it 3 more times. Open credit, open credit, open credit, right? So this mathematical factor is tied into the age of open credit. So for example, you get a car and it's a 5-year term. A lot of people think because I paid that car off, which was 5 years of payments, car number 1, paid off 3 years ago. I paid another car off, 5-year terms. I just paid it off last month. In their mind, they think I've got 10 years of good payment history, right? Look at 10 years I've been paying. They think that that's a big deal. It's what have you done for me lately, right? Right, Janet Jackson, right? Right? Hey, banks don't care what you did back then. They want to know like right now, because why? The economy changes daily, right? That's fine. You might have had a job last year, but you got a job now, right? So the thing with open accounts, the longer you have these accounts open and you're making those payments, there is some value to it. It's a 79.5 value. Now, this is why when you go to get a mortgage loan, your loan officer is going to tell you not to do 2 things other than quit your job, right? He's going to say, don't open credit and don't close credit, right? Now, that seems kind of weird. Wait a minute. I'm about to give me a mortgage. I think it's responsible if I go ahead and close these credit cards, because if they close, I can't use them. So I can't get in trouble. The math don't work that way. Now, let me give you a real life scenario. So during COVID, my score probably was like an 810 credit score, right? You are not going to be in the 800s if you're not pulling in probably about 35 to 50 points off of this number 3, right? Age of open credit. Now, how did I get that? Very simple. I had a mortgage that was 13 years old, right? So if you look at your Credit Karma, hopefully you guys got Credit Karma, it's free. Even though the scores are not the same as a mortgage one, I want to actually show you this so that you can understand what I'm telling you is the truth. So if you got your Credit Karma, pull it open real quick. After I show you this, everybody's going to download Credit Karma, because Credit Karma will help you cheat the system. Actually, let me take that word. That's a negative word. It's going to help you work the system. There you go. You got to be careful the words come out your mouth. Your words got power. Okay. I got this big old screen phone with my eyes, I'm getting old. So if you look at my phone, it's going to say 5 years, 9 months.
Yes.
You can see it? 5 years, 9 months. And it got some colors under it. It's got a little arrow pointing down to yellow. It's like a color barcode. Right? Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So underneath the barcode, there's a color red. And across from it, it says 0 to 4 years. So if your average age of open credit is 0 to 4 years, it says need work, which is another way for saying bad, right? Yellow is fair, 5 to 6 years. Good is a light green, 7 to 8 years. And excellent is 9+ years, right? So that's the best you can get when your average age is 9 years. Now, let me give you an example. If I have a mortgage that's 10 years and I have nothing else open on my credit, then by default, I'm excellent. I'm getting 79.5 points. But if I go out and open a credit card and I have 1 month on the credit card, now I have 10 years, 1 month. You got to divide by the number of accounts open into the time. So that 10 years, 1 month divided by 2 drops me to 5. So I would have went from excellent to fair. I would have lost half of the 79.5 points just by opening a credit card. All right. So here's what happened to me. And actually, I got a Capital One that's on my credit. You tell the people how many years that Capital One's been open. The top line.
16.
16 years.
11 months.
Right? Right? And I'll tell you what, that ain't even mine. That's my wife. Because she used to work at Capital One way before I knew her. Right? And I'm like, hey, once I figured out the cheat code, I'm like, hey, babe, can you add me to your card? Because you got a long history with that one, right? So that's how you have to play the game. So here's how it works. When I had this house, 13-year history, right? And that Capital One, even a longer history. That's why I was maximizing that 79, because my average history probably was pushing like 9 years plus was my average. But when COVID happened, I said the people in Harris County are crazy, so I'm going Montgomery County, right? But I didn't want to sell my house because I'm in real estate. It's like, hey, as long as you can hold on that house and rent it out, you need to do it, right? Your Social Security ain't going to be around for folks like me, right? So I said, let me refinance that house, which I paid no money down, VA. Rates dropped. Remember, rates took a dip. So I refinanced that house into a conventional loan. Now, if I had that loan for 13 years and I turned around and killed that loan, that 13 years went away in the equation. Right? I lost it. But then I opened up a brand new loan. So what did I do? I restarted a brand new loan that now entered into the equation. See, the 13-year loan went out of the equation. The new mortgage, as soon as it was 1 month, it went into the equation. That was a double negative impact on my longevity. It hurt me twice. But then I went and bought a house in Montgomery, and I started another new loan. That hurt me again. So just those things that I did, which I thought was responsible. Give me a house, rates were low, refinanced it, right? I think I'm doing something responsible. But the thing is, I lost almost 80 points. So that 810, 820, wherever I was, that joker dropped down to probably like 740. That was a big chunk, right? So then I said, you know what? Because you learn through life experience. So I said, you know, I got to come up with a way how to game this system, right? So I said, you know, what stores could I get a credit card from that I'll probably never use? So I went right down here on this feeder road, all the way down to Rooms to Go. And what's a home furniture, Rooms to Go? What's the other? Home store or something like that?
Yeah.
One of those.
Room to
I know one of them was Rooms to Go, and the other one I think was
Home store.
Or could it be Action Furniture? I don't know. Because I don't ever shop there. It costs too much. And I'm a loyalist. I'm a dedicated fan of Bell furniture. Better quality at a cheaper price, right? Yeah, I like Mattress Mac and everything, but man, he got some hardcore prices, right? And stick you on that interest. So I know that I'm never going to buy from Ashley Furniture or Rooms to Go. So I got their credit cards. Because why? When I lost that mortgage, it hurt me. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just get a credit card and I'll let it ride for the next 15 to 20 years, without, just like I did at Capital One. Right? That's how you have to think. Go get a credit card that you know that you'll never use. So number one, you're never going to have a balance, because the Walmart, I blow through that balance like every month because of the grocery. I get the points, I get the rewards, all that stuff, right? So I use a couple credit cards that I don't ever use to offset my balances on the cards that I do. That's why my balances never really go above a 50 or 60%. But at the same time, I use those cards for longevity without even using them. Right? So now I'm back up to like 5 years and 9 months or something like that. But it's the mortgages. These are just brand new mortgages, a couple years old now. It's going to take me a while, you know, to get that average back up. See, this is the game. It's like playing Monopoly. Once you learn this credit scoring system, you can do whatever you want, right? Because if you got good credit, you got people that'll let you leverage their money. Not my money, their money. Okay. Anybody have any questions on factor number 3? That one you'd have to know a little bit of math with, right? But I'm just giving you an easy way out. Get you some credit cards that you're never going to use. Open it like an Express card, right? What you going to do? Buy everything in Express? You probably buy like a couple pants, a couple shirts. It ain't like I'm going to go buy stuff every year, right? Just get a credit card and just don't even use it. And somebody will say, well, if you don't use it, won't they close it? I never had somebody really close a credit card because I didn't use it. I've heard people that happened to them, right?
Yeah.
I think the reason they close it, because I've seen this happen. If you got 5 credit cards, right? And let's say 3 are department store cards. If you go late on another credit card, or a credit card goes in collection, the other ones will start closing them down on you. Because they always monitor your credit. Right? Why do you think you get that free credit wise on Capital One? It's just a way that they can monitor you, right? But the other thing is, your credit card have a date that's going to expire and they're going to renew. I believe another reason why they probably could close it is because, you know, it costs money for the plastic, right? Like when we had to deal with them, the credit card company, they had to print like thousands of them with our logo. So every time somebody made an order, they just put the person's name. There was a cost, so it's like 25 grand up front to produce those cards. They ate that bill, right? Plus they got the paper bills that come in the mail. That's why they keep trying to tell you, hey, do the electronic email, right? So if you have a credit card and you're not using it, they still are on the hook for money to keep that thing alive. So I think sometimes if you're about to renew that card, maybe put a little balance and just pay it off so that they won't close it. Because if you go through probably 2 or 3 cycles of them issuing you brand new cards and you're not giving them any type of money, then why would they even have you as a customer? And that's why Cons, I think I got Cons because every month they send me stuff in the mail. It's like, hey, use your credit card. We'll give you a certificate, $100 off if you buy something, right? I'm like, I ain't buying a Cons. I'm closer to Walmart and I can have Walmart ship it to my house. Cons ain't bringing it to my house, right? So you just got to play the game. All right, if there's no questions on that. Number 4, mix of credit. Now, this is another one that people could be getting more points. But they're like, well, you know, when I was in college, I messed up on credit cards and I'm anti-credit cards. So I'll go get a car on a loan, but I'll never do the credit card thing again.
We have somebody online that said a while back, I don't have any credit cards, I was scared of them.
Yep.
We told them,
There you go.
wait for it.
There you go. So here's the thing. I just showed you how you can go get a credit card and never even use it and game the system. But if you have different types of credit, you get more points. So now you can put like car loans, it could be like payday loans, credit cards. You could even put utilities on your credit now. So based on a diversity of credits, you have up to 53 extra points you could get. Right? Now, number 5, this one, you don't really have to work for this one. That's what you call the grace factor right here. 53 points everybody gets. right? Now, how could you lose it? Let people run your credit. So it's inquiries. Every time someone does a hard pull, you're going to lose anywhere to 2 to 3 points. And that inquiry will stay on your credit for 2 years. But hey, you could dispute online, right? Sometimes you could challenge it, especially if you go to CarMax and they shop you around because they are a broker, right? They got CarMax financing, but they also broker loans. So you go to CarMax and you've got 15 inquiries on your report, right? You could challenge those. You can knock sometimes I got like 20 inquiries knocked off people's credit and their credit score just jumped like 40 points just because they came off. Right? Hey, I went to CarMax. I didn't know they were sending my credit to like 15 other people, right? I didn't authorize that. And it just get them knocked off. Okay? So, credit, very important. And this is how important it is. You're going to have some type of credit to get financing, unless you want to pay in cash. The higher your credit, the better you can get on the interest. So now, because we're going in the mortgage side, we own a mortgage company, which means we own the ability to look inside the bank's pricing engines. So I know for a fact when the credit score, the higher it goes, when the rates start dropping. So if you're going to write something down, that's probably one of the more important things that you need to put in your mind forever, because we all have a different opinion on what type of credit score we have to have, right? I'll give you an example. What credit score you have to get a good loan? Anybody? What do you say?
Well, since you have given us more information, it would depend on other factors.
Okay.
So if you had, if you were making $10,000 a month, and you could maybe get a house if you had a 600.
Okay. So I tricked you with my question because you're about to dig deep in it.
Yeah, mine got 580, 850, and 750.
Okay, 3 different answers. So here's why I tricked you. I said, what credit score you need to have to get a good loan?
Okay.
Good's open for interpretation.
Yeah.
Right? That can mean different things.
Yeah.
700 now.
Right? So we got 4 different answers. So let's deal with something that's factual, right? That we can all agree. Now I tell people 640, even though they're gonna say all these other, I got a friend that got a 580. Yeah, they did, but they also got jacked on the interest rate, right? I know for a fact because we have contracts with $10 billion banks, and I can log into each one and I can run what's called a pricing scenario. I can put a 639 in there, right, on a loan amount of $400,000, and it shows me, number one, the free rate. Did you guys know there's a such thing called a free rate?
No.
In the mortgage industry, that's called par, right? That's a rate that you don't have to pay for, but it's directly tied into your credit score. So on a 639, it might say this person's free rate is a 7.25. But if they want a 6.5, they got to pay $5,000 to get it. That's what's called a discount point. You're buying down the interest rate. Now, the person that got the 640, 1 point higher, their par rate could be a 6.5. Now, if they want a 6% rate, they may only have to pay $3,000, right? So put this in your mind. Whatever your credit score is, you're going to get whatever rate that's directly tied to your credit score, right? Free rate. When a bank does not want your business at all, there won't be no free rate. It'll say, hey, you're going to get a 7.25 and you got to pay $5,000 for it. You're like, I ain't taking that deal. When COVID happened, almost all the banks did that because they didn't know what the future was going to predict. So in order for them to not say, we don't want your business, they just made it where there was no free rates. So it was a bad deal with every bank. You're like, I'm not taking that. They're like, hey, that's your choice. We didn't turn you down, right? So the way the rates fluctuate, they fluctuate multiple times in a day because banks that do loans, like wholesale lenders we deal with, that's their livelihood. That's all they can do is give out loans. So their rates, they go up and down based on the amount of volume that's coming in on the application. So when I say 640 is the magic number, in all the different lenders, when you hit 640, it's the biggest interest rate drop out of all the credit tiers. 639 versus 640 typically is a 1% interest spread. So if someone says, what's the credit score I need to get a loan? I'm going to say, you want a good loan or you just want any loan? Because if you my mama, then you will get a 640, right? Because I don't want the bank to take advantage of my mom, right? Now, there will be people that say, well, you know what? I'm going to wait until I get a 700 credit score. Here's my rebuttal. The next price break is a 660, but it ain't a 1% drop. It may not even be a 0.15. The next break is a 700, and it's an even smaller break than a 660, right? So you can go get your 700 by the time you, and this is why I show you how to game the system on credit. I'm not against people getting a 700, but if somebody says, I want to get a house, right? And maybe the math, they're not going to be able to do the math to get the 700. Like you got $40,000 on your Navy Federal Credit Union bill, you ain't going to get a 700, right? If you maxed out, because how long will it take for you to pay 40,000 off? It ain't going to happen overnight, right? By the time you pay it off, it's 2 years in the future. The price of the house went up by another $100,000, right? So 660 is a second break, but it's very small. 700 is even smaller, right? There's grants that the state's offering that's tied in with an interest rate. Right now, because they locked money in like 2 months ago, you could have a 620 credit score, and because it's a guaranteed rate of 6.5, they're getting a better deal than somebody with a 780 credit score. Plus, they're getting 4% down payment assistance. You scratching your head and say, that don't make sense. This mediocre credit person getting a 6.5 and I got almost 800 and I'm getting higher. And they get money for a grant. You got to know how to play the game, right? So sometimes what they teach us, right, there's also an alternative universe out there. So you got to know how to operate in both, okay? So good loan to me is simply this. If it's my money, right, it's the least amount of money out of my pocket today, and the least amount of money out of my pocket every month when I got to make that payment, right? So at a 640, there's 4 reasons why 640 also is an awesome number. We in a humongous city, 8 million people, right? 4th largest city. We might be the 3rd. People keep telling me it's the 3rd. I don't know. Google it. Let's see if we are the 3rd largest. So you are not going to be able to walk in to a bank and have a human make a decision on if they're going to let you borrow money. Maybe in the old days, population like 50 people in a community, right? And everybody knows where you work, right? No. When you get approved for loans today, it's through an automated underwriting system. It's a software. It's an algorithm. You guys experience this algorithm all the time. Every time you apply for credit on the internet and you get approved, it makes a decision like that, based on the data you put in. Now, you know you didn't get approved, right? If it don't tell you approved, right? It just say, we're thinking about it, and then you get the letter 2 days later saying you've been denied, right? It's an algorithm, right? Same thing with Credit Karma. It's monitoring your credit scores, and every time it goes up, they throw you more credit card offers, right? So when you get approved for a mortgage, because there's millions of people that are doing loans, when we put your data in the system and it goes through the AUS system, automated underwriting system, it's looking at a bunch of factors. Credit is a big one. Late payments is looking at those things too. Collections is looking at those things too, right? So a person is more likely to get the automated approval at a 640 than someone who may only be at a 620 or a 601, right? We track that data. So if we had 100 people that submitted an application, we would see a trend that if you're below a 640, you are less likely for the algorithm to approve you. And it may approve you at a 620, but it'll come back with a condition. We want you to have 2-month reserves in your bank account. 2-month reserves means 2 house payments somewhere in savings, because if you come upon hard times, they want to know you got 2 months backup. So they'll put an additional condition on you, then you'll get approved, right? So 640, you're going to have a higher chance of getting the automated approval. If you're doing an FHA loan, banks have at their own discretion, because they can make overlays on their loan. They can add to rules above and beyond the algorithm. If you have below a 640, then what they could do is stick you with a lower debt to income ratio for qualifying purposes. For example, they love 41%. They love 45%. But if you have a 640, you can go up to a 54%. What does that mean? If you are about to get an apartment or rent, and it's $1,000 a month, how much income do you have to make per month to get the $1,000 apartment payment?
2.5.
2.5 or 3 times. 3 times is kind of like the standard when it comes to renting, right? So what they're saying is, if you make $3,000 a month, 1/3 of that, 33%, is $1,000. So if you make $3,000, you qualify for $1,000. That's what you call a housing ratio, right? A rental housing ratio. It's the same thing for loans. So in that same scenario, let's say you apply for a loan and your debt to income ratio is 50%. That same $3,000 income, right? 50% of that is $1,500. You can qualify for a house payment of $1,500. That $1,500 in today's market, with the rates and everything, property taxes and insurance included, probably is going to be about $170,000 to $180,000 house, right? So that would be a 50% debt to income ratio. What I'm saying is, on FHA, if you have a 640, sometimes the algorithm allows you to get 54%. So 54% of the $3,000 could be your house payment. And then they start subtracting monthly debts you have, like car payment and student loans. And that 15 will start to dwindle. That's why you don't want to carry the credit card balances, because for every $100 a month you have in debt, your purchase power goes down. So that $1,500 goes down to $1,400 if you got a $100 credit card monthly debt. So now, instead of that $180,000 house, you just got bumped down to about $160, simply because you have an extra $100 a month in debt. That's why I would tell my people, don't go and carry balances on your credit card. Forget that 30% balance rule, because it will come back to bite you in the butt. Your credit's going to be lower, plus your purchase power is going to be lower. Okay? So that's the second reason, your purchase power. You can have a little bit higher housing ratio. We already talked about the interest rate, right? So we talked about the algorithm. You got a better chance of getting approved without having crazy conditions. We already talked about the housing amount you qualifies higher. We already talked about the interest rate. The fourth one is, in the event that you do qualify for, let's say, down payment assistance, typically, if it's like a state program, a city program, county, they may impose an overlay or a guideline that's based on credit score. Because if you get the Montgomery County money, for example, which they don't pose a credit score, but let's just say they did, right? But they don't. They might say, if we give you $12,000 for your down payment and you have shaky credit, what happens if you lose the house because you just don't want to pay it? Then they just lost that money, right? So some programs require a certain credit score. It's either 620 or 640. We just tell people, shoot for the moon, 640 or higher. Okay, so now, all those 4 answers we got on credit scores, I'm saying 640. And I'm giving you logical reasons, not what your mom and dad told you, not what your friend told you, right? If they're going to tell you something different, say, break it down from a logical standpoint and tell me why, right? Because again, there's people out there that missed the boat. They're like, I should have bought a house before COVID. But Dave Ramsey said, save up all your money, save your 20% down. Well, guess what? Prices of homes went up 10% in 2021, another 10%, 2022, right? They went up on average 30%. You're trying to save 20%, which could take you years, but houses just went up 30% in less than 3 years. right? Or someone says, well, you should buy when you got a 740 credit score. Again, if you would have had the 640 4 years ago before COVID, you would have bought a house 100,000 less. Or a bigger house, because you know the houses are getting smaller now. Because when affordability is it ain't there no more, they got to shrink the houses up, right? 4 years ago, there was no such thing as no brand new 2-bedroom, 1 bath, no car garage. That's the top selling house right now at about $180,000. 2-bedroom, 1 bath, no garage, no yard, and they selling like hotcakes. Before COVID, 190 got you 3-bedroom, 2 bath, good yard in Porter, right off of 99, which is an up and coming area, right? So you gotta guard your ears. Don't be just listening to people that don't got experience in this business, right? Because your best friend probably is the one who jacked you up and you don't have a home right now. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So, and all these podcast people, don't be listening to podcast people. These podcast people on YouTube, they not here in my market, right? Don't be listening to somebody in Indiana, in California. Don't. Every market is different. And we are in a blessed market because our inventory, even though it may not be tons of homes, it is way better than everybody else. Everywhere you go, you see home building like crazy. 1/3 of our inventory right now is brand new homes. That's a lot. And that ain't even including the shadow inventory, because some builders are not putting all their houses in the MLS to the public.
Just one more time, just mention what a good loan, how you define
Okay.
what a good loan that is the best to say, because somebody's asking.
Okay.
What is considered a good loan?
My definition of a good loan is a loan that I don't have to put a lot of money out of my pocket when I get the keys to that house, because I think my money is better spent elsewhere, investing, right? 640, you get an FHA, 3.5% down. 640, you live in the country, you get a no money down loan called USDA rural, right? VA, no money down. 640, you could qualify for grants based on your income, which means you can use somebody else's money to get your house. You get a lower interest rate at a 640. That's the biggest interest rate drop, is at a 640. The next one is a 660, but it's a little bit smaller. Okay, you can qualify for more of a home. That's the problem people are having now, right? I want to get that little house that's, you know, 210,000, but they're not giving it to me because of my ratio. It's probably because you got a 599 credit score, right? Get it up to a 640, you'll probably jump an additional 20, 30 in your purchase power, right? So those are the reasons the 640, purchase power, grants, lower interest rate, and you got better odds of the computer system giving you the automated approval.
You've always told us the best loan is the least amount of money out of your pocket. So that way that they use their money, not yours. So you're not just house rich or.
Yes. Yeah. So I just said.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. In a recession, you don't want to tie your money in a house. Because right now, people tie money in their house and they scrambling to get HELOC loans, and the bank ain't giving nobody HELOC loans. Yeah. It's like HELOC is when you have equity in your house and you trying to pull it out. Banks ain't trying to give you loans to pull that money out, because they're like, wait a minute, their houses went up too quick. What happens when they start dropping? Right? So it's better to keep your money in a place that outpaces inflation. Right? All right. Any other questions on credit? How we doing on time? 245. 245, okay. Most of this time is spent on credit because you got to relearn, right? Once you relearn, everything else falls in place. So mortgage, very simple. Make sure you've been having a job for 2 years, working. You got to have a job to pay somebody back, right? This is one of the things that kind of upsets me. Student loans. They give you $100,000 and you don't even have a job to pay them back right now. They say, hey, we'll give you the money now, and maybe one day you'll get a job and can pay us back. They bind you. And now you can't get a house because you got all this debt, right? So when you get a house, it is illegal for a bank to give you a loan if you do not have the ability to repay. That's an actual law, ability to repay, right? That's why they have that housing ratio, that they won't let you qualify more than a certain amount, and it's tied into your credit score. Because if they do give you money and you can't pay it and you default, then they got to buy that loan back. Okay, and most banks don't keep the loan; they sell it on a secondary market. They don't want to take it back, but then they got to service that loan, right? With somebody who ain't paying on it, or they got to take it to foreclosure, which they don't want to do that. So have a job 2 years, but here's the thing: people get paid in different ways. The number one way is the W-2 employee. If you are a W-2 employee, you go, right? You get a guaranteed, hourly rate. You get a salary. Sometimes you get an hourly rate plus commission. Sometimes you get an hourly rate plus overtime, shift differential, so many different ways, right? If you're a W-2 and you get an hourly rate, but there's other types of rates that you get, right? Like overtime. We have to average that over a 2-year period because some companies pay overtime based on the season, right? Or if you get an hourly rate or you get a salary, but you also get commissions, right? Commissions are really subject to you selling some stuff, right? So again, because that can fluctuate, the commissions, we got to get an average over 2 years. So a lot of times people take these jobs and they say, hey, I'm making $60,000 a year. I'm going to take this new job and take a pay cut of $40,000 because now I get bonuses and commissions. And in my commissions, they're telling me I can make another $40,000 a year. That's great, right? I would probably take that, but not if I'm buying a house. Because as soon as you take that pay cut, we don't count any commissions that you get unless you show proof of the average over 2 years, right? So W-2 can be tricky. That's why we do the verification of employment. We ask your boss, explain to us exactly how the pay works so that we can calculate it before we send you over to one of the banks that we work with. Now, if you're self-employed, which can be a 1099 contractor, like we real estate agents, we're 1099 contractors, right? People that cut hair, right? They're independent contractors. If you're that type of self-employed, or you just have an LLC, like a company, right? We got to see 2 years of your tax returns. And based on being self-employed, here's where it gets tricky. You make this amount of money gross, but after you do all your write-offs, your net is here. We go by net for self-employed people. For W-2 people, we go by gross. So sometimes the person who quit that W-2 job to be entrepreneurial, right? They down here, sometimes they go back and get that W-2 job and immediately we can add that gross income. Okay? So I'm pro capitalism, which means the more you hustle, the more you should earn, right? So I'm for entrepreneurs, right? But the problem is there is a disadvantage if you're looking at buying a home because of the way they look at your income. Okay? I'll give you a prime example. We got so many truck drivers. They love saying I make $100,000 a year. Yeah, you do. But just the insurance on that rig is $1,800 a month. You're paying 20 grand a year just to insure that thing. Don't even talk about the diesel fuel, right? So they make 100,000. Yeah, that goes into your bank. But at the end of the day, they make $30,000 a year after all the expenses. They write off meals. If they got a layover in a hotel, right? Maintenance, insurance, and everybody knows insurance going up, right? So when they are upset because they can't even get a $60,000 mobile home, we got to explain to them. It's the industry that you're in is top heavy with expenses, right? So there's nothing we can do about that. Now, having a mortgage company, if you are self-employed, actually there is something we can do about it. There is a special type of loan. It's called a bank statement loan for self-employed people. And what we do is we can gather up your last 12 months of bank statements and we can look at your gross income that's coming in. We can base a loan off the gross. So if you do make $10,000 a month, and let's say your expenditures are $5,000 a month, typically we look at the $5,000 net. But in a bank statement loan, we look at the big picture. But here's the problem with that type of loan. You have to put 10% down, and you're going to get an interest rate that's typically 2% higher than a traditional loan. So you might be looking at a 9 to 10% interest rate, right? with the minimum 10% down. Once you do your taxes right, because we do know a lot of people write stuff off that probably they should be writing off, right? You do your taxes right, then you can refinance in a better loan. Sometimes we have to do that. For example, a real estate agent's been doing it for a year, making good money, right? But they don't have the 2-year history. So we can do a bank statement loan as a 12 months, looking at their bank statement. And then after they had their 2nd year in the business, we can get their tax return and then refinance them in a better loan. Drop that interest rate. Okay. So employment, very important. Now, if you are a student and you're getting education, whether it's like a college, show proof of your transcript, your associate or your bachelor's, that can be used as your employment. So you will not have to have 2 years of employment, right? You could be someone going down to the Fortis Institute right over here off the Beltway, getting a LVN license, a dental tech license, a medical billing license. That's like a 9-month program, right? I tell you, the VA hospital, they recruit from that school. These kids get like $18, $19 starting pay. You go to one of those tech schools, as long as you got the certification, then that is your job history. Okay? These are some little loopholes written into the mortgage financing laws there. Okay? Lots of little things.
What about
like
retirement?
Retirement. I was just about to talk about that.
Okay.
So there's other income outside of you actually laboring every day. It could be retirement, pensions, drawing money from your 401k, your annuities. I'm a disabled vet, so I get a check from the government, every first, right? So you can use additional income as long as it can be documented, right? So in my situation, I get a certified letter January of every year from the Veterans Administration that says this is what my monthly allowance or payment is, right? Same thing with SSI. You get a letter that comes out. Even if you're getting stuff like child support. Child support is an income that's coming into your household. You can use that as long as it's coming through the Attorney General. It can't be, oh, my boyfriend gave me like $200 one month and then he gave me $500. That's not stable, right? Got to be a court order and we got to show proof that it's coming in. I got a lot of parents that even have older children, like 30 years old, that are disabled and they're getting that SSI disability on behalf of their 30-year-old kid. You can use that as well. Now, here's a great thing about some of these additional incomes. If you don't pay taxes on it, income tax, like I don't pay taxes on my VA, check. We can gross it up by 25%. So this is how 100% disabled vets, typically they make about $4,000 a month, right? Based on if they're married and have kids, they can make a little bit more. That $4,000, when we gross it up by 25%, that's an additional $1,000. So we don't look at just the $4,000, we look at $5,000. And then they don't have to pay property tax because they got the 100% disability. When you take the property tax out of that monthly housing payment, for a lot of people, that's taken away like $600 a month. That's how they, making $4,000, can go get a $350,000 house and not pay the monthly payment that most people will pay on it. Yeah. So if there's any vets out there, make sure you connect with us. A lot of benefits like that. Okay. So some of the documents you're going to need, and the document list is in that handbook, but I'm just going to touch on a couple. They're always going to need your bank statements to make sure you're not money laundering, right? And also to make sure that you're responsible. If you get a non-sufficient fund fee in those last 60 days worth of bank statements, from that month when you had that non-sufficient fund fee, you're going to have to wait 2 more months, right? They go through every line item. So if you're that type of person that's like, well, I got this one account, my income comes in, but then I take, my bills out of it, and then I take a couple thousand, I put it over here. They want the savings account and they want the checking. But because you have expenses coming out of here, you get that overdraft. You can't say, well, I didn't get an overdraft over here. No, whatever you give us, we got to look at everything. The underwriter look at everything. So sometimes I get people, they got checking account with this bank, a checking account with this bank, a checking account, Zelle over here and this over here. So they run lean in one of their bank accounts. Oh, I haven't touched that one for a while. And you got 15 overdraft fees because you forgot your Netflix was connected to it, right? Watch your bank accounts if you're going to buy a house. Sometimes you got to shut down those three just to consolidate down to one so that you don't get in a situation where you got those non-sufficient overdraft deals in it, okay? Now, when I say they're looking to see if you do money laundering, any amount of money that goes into those bank accounts over $100 that you do not have a paper trail, right? They're going to question you on that, right? Now, if someone just walked up to you on the street and gave you a bag of cash for $300, right? And you have no paper trail, what they could do is say, if you wanted to use that money to put towards your down payment, you can't until you season that money. Season means let it set for 2 months. Because now they got 2 months of new bank statements, right? Because they always want at least 60 days. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you got no side hustle and you got people that's selling you stuff, that's fine. Just document in the notes. You know, I cut this grass. I got $50 with Zelle, or I sold something, you know, on eBay or something. Make sure everything is documented. Okay?
Like, what if someone is sending you cash apps once a month or something?
Why they doing it?
Because they want to.
Oh, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work for an underwriter. Huh? Depending on how much it ain't gonna work. Let me tell you why. It's called the Patriot Act. You guys remember those crazy people that ran those planes into the buildings in New York? Mm-hmm. Where were they living at? Sarasota, Florida. Anybody know Sarasota? That's where Jerry Springer lives. Oprah got a house out there. Yep, a lot of rich people. They're like, how are terrorists living in Sarasota? I couldn't even live in Sarasota, right? Let alone they flying private jets at the Sarasota airport. That's where all the rich people got their planes. So how was they able to have real estate? Because Osama bin Laden and his family was giving money to them, right? To be able to purchase property on American soil, right? So that's when the Patriot Act came up. So now when you try to buy a home and you get financing, they look to see what's coming into your bank account. That was a Patriot Act. Okay? Just like if you go and put $10,000 in your bank account, that could be a red flag, right? And they ask you where that money came from. When I first started the company, I started getting hit all the time. Like, wait a minute, it's a brand new account. Where these real estate commission checks coming from, right? It was flags. Those be popping up, right? But now they trace all that. So your bank account now is automated. It sees habits and trends now. So you don't get all those flags and everything.
Still, we get those every now and then. Checks or things that are coming in, they get stopped, freeze until they release it.
Yep.
Still not that long.
All right. So when you are going to buy a home, which means you're going to have a housing payment, the thing that you're doing today in your life that's most similar to a house payment is your rent payment, right? We will also have to do verification of rent. Now, that could be tricky because if you live with your mama, whose mama would not lie for them and say, oh, my baby's never late, you know, knowing you ain't paying your mama, right? So if you rent from a family member or a guy named Joe, Joe was like, hey, I got this house and, you know, just selling me some money, man, with a handshake, right? Typically, they're not going to believe folks like that when it comes time to doing the verification of rent, right? So it's on you that you make sure you document. So I get all the time, well, I live at home with my mom. I'm trying to save some money for a down payment. And I just give my mom some money for the light bill, the Netflix, and I buy groceries sometimes. That's fine. Stop doing that and just write your mom a check. Here's $300 a month. And you put the month and put rent on it, right? And just give it to mom. It's the same thing. You're just moving money around. Because they need to know your habits for your housing payment, right? Now, if you are living in a place where there's a property management company, right? That's a business. They know a business ain't gonna lie, right? But it's just when it's an individual person who's not an official property manager. That's why I say some guy named Joe, right? And let me tell you, it was 2 times this happened. We try to get verification of rent on someone. Listen, that landlord was dead for 6 months. The lady's like, I didn't know. I just keep going to his bank like he told me, just putting the money in the bank account. That happened twice. Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine that? Verifying somebody's rent and the landlord was dead 6 months. Yeah. Another one, the landlord was in a whole different country. Couldn't even track him down. Yeah.
In case something was broke, you're not gonna find.
Yeah. So the thing is, make sure you cover yourself. Get that check. You can still go to the man's bank account and just write the check and put it in. Don't go get cash and put it in. Write the check. And the bank will cash it. As long as you got their account number, they're cashing. Okay? And it's okay to do Zelle as long as you put the rent on there. All right. Work history, we talked about that. Reserves, we talked a little bit about that. If you do have some money somewhere, 401k, Roth IRA, checking account, savings account, they might even look at crypto account now. As long as you get a statement and it shows that you got some money, right, that could be liquidated in an emergency. That can be reserves. So if we put in the reserve that, hey, this person got $10,000, even though you don't want to use it on your house, it makes your file stronger when it goes to the underwriting. Okay. Now, here's something else we want to talk about. Because prices of homes are going up, and folks that are my age, whose parents are probably pushing high 60s, right?
Watch out, man.
High 60. I'm 48. I just say 67, 68, 69, right? They at that point where they don't really work anymore. They got the Social Security, or they might work part-time. But that money is not enough for them to go live in their own apartment anymore, or their house. Or if they do got a house, they're like, hey, I got 200,000 equity. I'm going to cash out. I'm going out, living life awesome for the next 20 years, right? Let me just go and live with my kids, right? And I'll babysit for free if y'all give me free room and board, right? So there is a trend now where folks are bringing their parents into their house, right? It doesn't make sense that, grandma's paying $1,400 for 1 bedroom and got utility and groceries, right? So what they do is they can use mom's Social Security to help them to boost the income to get a bigger house. That's what I did with this house over here, because I knew my wife's parents, they had kids when they were like in their 30s, right? So my father-in-law, he's like 70 something, right? So, and they were pastors, so they never had a house. So what we did was we moved them into one of these Lennar Next Gen, where they had their own little apartment, right? So I understand how that is, right? Especially with, the thing with the Alzheimer's and the dementia, we got experience with that too. You got to keep your eye on your parents. So if you need someone else's income to help you to get a bigger house because you're going to start moving your families in there, right? You can do that, but here's the catch. If you're going to use their income, they also got to have the right credit. So sometimes our parents, they don't have no credit. So they might have to go get a secure credit card, or you might have to add them onto your account and then wait 30 days so that their credit score pop up. We just did that with my parents-in-law. They were living with me for like 17 years. But my mother-in-law always had the dream. If I come to America, because they're from Venezuela, she always wanted to have a house. She was a pastor's wife for 40, 50 years. They just never had a house. So before she, leave this earth, she wanted to say, I got my own little piece of land, right? So with my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they put their income together. My mother-in-law had no credit score. My sister-in-law added to a credit card. 30 days later, we tracked it like a hawk. Boom, immediately she had 700 plus credit scores. They closed on a little house, little 2-bedroom, 2-bath over by south of Lake Conroe. Got a $12,000 Montgomery County grant. Builder paid 4% in closing costs. Did an interest rate buy down. We started at a rate of 4.8, bought it down to about 2.8. The payment's $900 a month, right? So you can add other people right? Whether it's your parents or even your kids. You might have a 25-year-old that says, hey, I'm not ready to get married and I'm just going to stay at home with my mama, right? And he might have a good job driving for Amazon, making $90,000 a year, right? And you go out and get a house with your parents. So that's happening a lot now, okay? All right, last thing we're going to talk about, that's the mortgage stuff. Unless anybody got any question on mortgages. I think somebody had a question earlier about mortgages.
Yeah.
That I said we would, but I answered that, didn't
You
I?
answered that.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the part that's the fun part. Everybody like going shopping, right? You see, it's funny because when people go buy a car, they never say, you know what, let me check my credit and then let me apply for an auto loan and then let me go shopping, right? No, they drive around, oh, there's a Ford dealership over there. Let me just stop by and see what they have. And if I see something I like and I do a test drive, then maybe I'll go ahead and apply for the credit, right? Because everybody gonna get a car, no matter what your credit is, somebody gonna finance you, right? So we got that stuck in our mind that buying a house is the same way, but it ain't. It's very dangerous to try to buy a house like you buy a car. Because again, you go look at some houses with a real estate agent without being pre-approved. You get your heart set on a home, and, oh my God, I got to get this house right now. And then you go to financing with your 580 credit score and you get that 7.5% interest rate and got to put that 5% down. You just made a bad financial decision. And you stuck for 30, you're not stuck, but that's a 30-year loan, right? People will say, oh yeah, I'll get my credit better once I move in. They don't, right? And I'm like, you're paying $200 more for that house than your neighbor because he decided to get his credit, then get the better mortgage, and then get the same house. Same house, but you pay more for it, right? So I get it. People like going out there, looking at houses. I like it, HGTV. We look at what they're doing on TV, and we want to do the same thing, right?
I love it.
So, all right. So when you go to purchase a house, right, you want to go with your purchase power in hand. You want to go with the money, right? If you know what you got and the person selling the house know what they got, you're going to be able to bargain and haggle with them. But if you don't know what you got, you ain't got no leverage, right? You need to say, I know how much I'm approved for. I know how much money I need up front, because here's the thing. The money that you need to buy your house, not just the down payment, but the closing costs. If you know that number, you're going to negotiate with the seller. Hey, you really want to sell that house? It's been on the market for 2 months. I need $8,000 for my closing costs. Let's wheel and deal, because I'm good for the money. I just need $8,000 more, right, to make this deal work, okay? So when we go out and start looking at homes so that we're transparent, nobody is fooled, there is some cost up front, right? I call this my amnesia form. Because every client we sit down with, we're like, listen, before we go and look at some houses, you better have this money, right? So it seems like, we get the credit right, we get the finance. Oh my God, we want to go see some houses. We show some houses. Okay, you want to buy it? We need to come up with the earnest money. What's that? Like, what you mean, what's that? Right? Then you go to the class and we do a one-on-one consult, right? So you will see this form again, amnesia form, because people forget. Earnest money. When someone says, how much money will I need to buy a house? For a fact, you're going to have at least earnest money, because ain't no person going to take their house off the market, which means nobody else can buy it, if there's no skin in the game from you. It ain't like HGTV. They see 3 houses, yes, right? Then they go outside. What you think about it? Oh, house number 1. Okay, let me call. Yeah, my client wants to make this offer. Okay, and then you like circling the parking lot, and then they call. We got a deal. When did you do the paperwork? When did you do the paperwork? Right? You think if I'm selling my house, I'm going to tell you over the phone, we got a deal, and I don't even know what type of financing you got? Yeah. Right? You need some money for closing? Well, I'm going to say we got a deal, and then you will come back and say, oh, yeah, by the way, I need $10,000. Then we got a deal. No. Put it in writing, right? And then send it. Especially in a market like this. I'm not going to say we got a deal. I got 5 other people lining up with paperwork, right? So, earnest money. in the state of Texas, and all the states that I'm a broker in, there is no law on how much that's going to be, right? So the rule of thumb, which doesn't even mean anything because everything's negotiable, is we try to get away with $1,000 or 1% of the sales price. So if the house is $300,000, the seller and their agent probably said, let's get 1%. So we want $3,000. You write us a check so that we can take the house off the market. Now, why do you want that check? Because what if they got somebody that says, oh, I'll buy your house in cash and I'll give you $10,000 more. They could easily say, you know what? Because there's no skin in the game, I'm going to cancel this and I'm going to go with this guy. So there's got to be some skin in the game for them to take the risk because they choosing you on this offer, right? So 1,000 or 1%. Now, again, there's no law, there's no rule. We work with builders, like, and I'm still shocked. They'll take $200. Like, you're going to sell me a $290,000 house and you only ask me for $200, right? It's like the wild, wild west when it comes to this. I got builders like right now where, oh yeah, $5,000 earnest money. I'm like, are you crazy? Okay, we'll take $2,500, right? We got builders that have $3,000. Hey, can we make a payment plan? Because the house is under construction. It ain't gonna be ready for another 3 months. We'll give you half now and we'll make installment payments, right? Like layaway, buying the house on layaway, right? So that earnest money, it will get cashed. It will get deposited at a title company. It'll be cashed, right? In the event that you just change your mind and say, I don't want the house, that's the penalty that you're going to pay for tying this house up, right? But we do understand that sometimes when you buy a house, you're all excited, emotions all over the place, right? You know, oh my God, buyer's remorse, right? Well, in the state of Texas, we got this thing called an option period. And an option period is when you pay a fee. Again, there's no law. It's all negotiable, but I'm giving an example. $200 to buy 3 to 10 days, right? This is your due diligence period. I walked around the house. My agent told me I only had 30 minutes because in the MLS, I only got 30 minutes to look at the house, right? But I'm an engineer. I can look at the house for 5 hours before I make a decision. You don't got 5 hours to look at the house. You got 30 minutes. Do you like it? Do you want to make an offer? Yes. But I want to buy some time. I want to get an inspector out there. Inspector going to spend at least 2 hours in that house. So if you're an engineer, go with an inspector. Go. Y'all got 2 hours. You look up some crime stats on the internet. Look up the list with the bad guys that do the bad stuff to the kids, right? Find out who lives in the neighborhood, right? You should do that. Don't find out later and then come back to your real estate agent. Hey, I didn't know the guy next door, right? So look up the crime. Drive by night. See if people partying in the street, right? See if the car is zipping up and down. You got kids, don't be zipping up and down my street, right? Go out there on trash day. Do it look jacked up on trash day. The cat's running around, right? My wagon, hey cat, right? So this is an opportunity that you're paying for the right to change your mind for any reason you want. You could say, I didn't know it, but the house is facing in the wrong direction. Now that I came back in the morning, I don't want the sunlight coming up in my bedroom, right? Give me my earnest money back. Give me my $3,000. They just keep your deposit for the option period because you're paying for the right up front to cancel, right? So if you go past that period, you go past the option period, then if you change your mind, you could be liable for losing your earnest money. Okay? Now, there are some more protections. If you're getting a loan and the house doesn't appraise, let's say that you bought it for $300,000 and the bank says it's only worth $280,000. You can get out of it because technically you ain't gonna get approved for it, the $300,000. Ain't no bank gonna give you $300,000 for a house that's worth $280,000. You have the right to cancel. They can lower the price to the $280,000 or you can pay the difference, right? So there's some financial ways you could get out of it as well, okay? So let me tell you how we were using this during COVID. During COVID, houses were flying off the shelf, multiple offers. There is no law that says you can't go and put a contract on 2 houses at the same time. Lock them up as long as they accept it, right? Because if you got an option period, let's say back then, we do an option period like 3 days on a house, right? Lock it up, 3 days, I can change my mind, 3 days, I can change my mind, get your inspectors out there. Your agent was probably bringing you back out 50 million times because you were stressed out, I got 3 days. And then you say, you know what? This one is a one-on-one. You cancel that one. You only paid a couple $100, right? You get your earnest money back and you move forward with this one, right? We did that a lot during the COVID era, right? So you got to be, what do you say, wise like a serpent, gentle like a dove, right? You got to be smart about your business. So inspection, for your protection, get an inspection, right? You'll sign a document that actually says that. I didn't make that up. So if you're going to buy a house, whether it's used or a new house, get an inspector. We got a list of inspectors, right? We don't tell you who you have to use. We just give you a list. You talk to them. But here's the thing. I know some people out there are cheap. I'm cheap. They say, well, it's a brand new house. I don't want to pay $400 for inspection on a brand new house. But let me turn you on to something. This is true. There's two things about Texas, right? That's different than almost every other state. In the state of Texas, number one, when you work for a home builder as a salesperson, the builder does not want you to have a real estate license. If you do have one, they make you turn it off, inactivate it. Because remember in the beginning, we said there's certain laws that apply to you, right? When you go meet somebody that has a license that's active, the first thing they got to do is give you that disclosure. Well, if their license is inactive, they ain't got to give it to you. They represent the builder. So the builder does not want that type of real estate agent thinking about your best interest, putting you first, right? So that's why you got to be careful what you hear, because these salespeople, they look just like us, right? They wear ties just like I got a tie. They got a nice belt, nice shoes, right? Got suits sometimes. That don't mean that they like us. You see, we got a responsibility according to the law because we have an active license. Do you know if I go and sell my house to you, I got to put on a contract that I have a license? Because why? I could have an unfair advantage over you because I know more than you do about real estate. I got to disclose that. These guys, they don't follow the same rules. Number two, in the state of Texas, there's no such thing as a general contractor's license, which means there's no studying for them, right? To build houses, you don't have to, there's no school, right? There is no exam for them, right? There is no such thing as a general contractor's license. Now, there's a plumber, he has a license, electricians have a license, HVAC. I know personally, because I work for a builder, where the owners of the builder used to make jokes with one another. You ever remember that show, Trading Places? Right? When the two rich guys, like, hey, we can take this bum off the street, turn him into a businessman, right?
Right.
The owners of the company I work for, they were like that. Getting drunk. You see that bartender? I bet you I could turn him into a salesperson or have him building houses for us. They would start him off in sales, they failed, and then they put him over building houses in construction. They used to do that. So in our company I worked for, it was a lot of bartenders that was building houses, right? Wow. Yeah, right? Because you don't have a general contractor's license, right? I know people that probably they graduated high school. I know they didn't go to Texas A&M for a construction management degree, but they build houses all the time. And I'm like, how do you even learn how to do it? Well, I learned from the electrician. I learned from the flooring guys. I learned from the framers, right? So you learn from your contractors. But what if they don't do the job right? Exactly. Right? And I know they don't, because when our inspectors go out there, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. So here's the thing about an inspector. Guess who has a license given to them by the state? An inspector. So the truth is, an inspector, a lot of times, if he got a lot of experience and keeps up with code, and they do take tests every year to renew, they could technically know more than somebody who's building your house. And if it's not true, why they come back with an inspection hit list on a brand new house? Right? All the time, right? So for your protection, get a home inspection, okay? It's worth it. And I'm just 400 is, I'm putting as a base price, right? Some will be cheaper, some will not. But again, $400 for an inspection. There might be one thing on that hit list that's way more than 400. It could be something as simple as 2 shingles elevated slightly, an inch. A hard wind comes, blows it, and then a hard rain comes, and now you got flooding in your attic. Or a drip pan that's not at the proper angle by code. So when there's an issue and the condensation comes in the drip pan and it doesn't go out and it overflows in your attic, well, what's underneath your attic? Probably some bedrooms if it's a 2-story. If it's a 1-story, it could be your kitchen, right? And then the whole wall caved in because your drip pan wasn't at the proper angle according to code, right? So that 450 is nothing compared to what you're going to pay if something goes wrong with that house, and they will find it. We have termite inspection that's required on VA loans, but really that's a pest inspector, right? Some home inspectors are dual license. Okay. I just say that when the inspector goes out there, which you can go out there with them, if they see evidence of pests, not just termite, it could be like rats gnawing and chewing and stuff, and little rat poops and stuff like that, right? You probably got an infestation, right? So you want to just make sure you keep an eye on that as well. I know in my house I had in spring, I used to hear the scratching. I'm like, oh my God, what is that? It was the little flapper for the exhaust. For the exhaust, like when you have your washer and dryer, it got the little flaps that when the pressure goes, man, them little birds, they open it and they go in there and they have eggs and there's little birds in there, right? Scratching around. Appraisal. Once the house passed inspection and you're like, okay, this is a decent house, or maybe there's some issues, but the seller's willing to fix it. The appraisal is a fee that you're going to pay to the bank. You're going to pay the bank and they're going to hire someone that's going to have their best interest, right? They're going to go out on behalf of the bank, number one, check the value out based on what the homes are in the neighborhood, right? Is that house really worth $300,000? If they say it's not worth $300,000, they report that back to the bank. The other thing is they do a minor inspection, not a full blown. Their inspection is this house ready to move in? Do it have windows, right? Or is it a cracked window? Does it have the appliances? Do the appliances work, right? So is this a livable house? Like if it had a smoke detector gone and the wires was hanging out, or maybe a ceiling fan was gone, the wires, they're going to say this ain't a habitable house. That's a danger, right? And they're going to report that, okay? So that's why sometimes the lender might say, here's some conditions based on the house that need to be taken care of, because the bank don't feel comfortable with lending it. Okay, let's go down. Now, everything in yellow is what we call the upfront money. It's when you get ready to start looking at a home. This is what you should already have up front, okay? That earnest money deposit, it's a credit that can go towards your down payment, or if you don't need a down payment, it could go towards your closing costs. So down payment is due on the day you close. So sometimes people say, well, I got $4,000, but my down payment is going to be $7,500. I don't have the whole $7,500. That's okay. You don't need it until you close, right? So if you're going to close on your house 3 months from now because it's under construction, or let's say somebody puts their house on the market today, but they don't want to move out until the end of May because they want their kids to graduate school, right? We can set the closing all the way to the end of May. So you got a couple months to come up with the rest of the money, right? So that's fine. If you don't have it all today, that's okay. But also there's ways that you could get money for your down payment if you qualify through some down payment programs and grants. But here's the good news. Even though it says FHA requires 3.5% down, let me put that in perspective. Let's say you do want to get an awesome house that's $300,000. That 3.5 is $10,500, right? Put it in perspective, right? Because sometimes people are like, hey, I don't have a lot of money. I don't have 20% down. I don't have 40,000. On a 300,000, it's 10,000, right? You don't have to buy a 300,000, buy a 200,000, right? And it goes down like 7,500. No big deal. It drops. But even though FHA is 3.5% down, We work with lenders. We have one in particular called Plaza Home Loans. They will finance your down payment into your monthly house payment. So if you don't have that $10,500, you'll get a smaller loan, which is called a lien, a second lien, and they stretch that $10,000 out over 10-year payments. So you might have to pay an extra $100 a month in your house payment while you're paying that smaller loan off. And then as you get your income tax, next year and the year after, you could just wipe that loan out. So the reason I'm telling you this is I know sometimes mathematically, based on how much money we make and how much we spend, especially if you have a car payment, you may say, well, my car payment will be paid off next summer. So maybe I'll wait to buy a house then because I can start saving money then. What I'm saying is there might be a way you could get in a house now without having the down payment and then just financing it into your monthly note, okay? Because if you wait a year and a half from now, maybe prices could be more. My first house was in Katy. I bought a 2,400 square foot home in Katy, Williamsburg Parish, right where Grand Parkway crosses right over French Road. I paid $135,000 for that house. I sold it, I think, for $168,000, like 6 years later. That same house right now, if you was to buy it, and I did put a pool in it, probably that house would probably be about $350,000, right? So what I do know for a fact, house prices, they eventually go up, right? Very rare do they go down. They did 2 years, around 2008, 2009. But as long as I've been in the business, 20 years, that's the only 2 years I've seen prices go down. But that was massive foreclosures and short sales. I ain't seen that in a long time, right? So the longer you wait, you will pay more. And you could be priced out of your area, right? So people that today want to live in Katy, most of them cannot live in Katy. 20 years ago, I was getting everybody in Katy because there was homes for $79,000 that they were building in Katy. But right now, most people cannot afford to live in Katy, no matter how bad you want your kids to be in Katy ISD. That's just a fact, right? So don't worry if you don't have the down payment, just talk to us. We'll come up with some solutions, right? Closing costs. Closing costs is additional money that you need to pay when buying a house above and beyond your down payment. It's like when you buy a car and they say the car is $25,000. What else do you have to pay if you don't get that car that day? Title, tax, and registration. And if it's a used car, they're trying to throw in an aftermarket warranty for like $1,200, right? But they typically roll that in to your loan amount, right? The great thing about closing costs is this. Unlike down payment, which down payment you have to pay, or if you can get a grant, or your family members can help you. Those are the only three ways, right? Government grant, you pay it, and your family members can help you. Closing costs, you can have a bank help you pay it, and you can have the seller help you pay it. If the bank helps you pay your closing costs, it's called a lender credit, right? So if your closing costs, let's say, for example, I just round up 4 to 6% based on your loan. Really, it comes in at 4. Let's say that your closing cost is $8,000. We have multiple banks that we broker loans through, and they're very competitive. It might be today that bank number one, they didn't get a lot of loans in coming across America, and they need 100 loans today. They might say, who do you have that has a contract on a house? We want to take a look at it because we need the loan to the point that we're going to offer an incentive where we'll throw a couple $1,000s at the borrower towards their closing costs if they choose us. See, as a broker, we have to give you multiple options according to law, right? Here's what Rocket Mortgage has. Here's what United Wholesale. Here's what Rocket Mortgage has. If you want to go conventional, VA, we give you options. But because we're brokers, we also look for those incentives for you as well, right? Because as real estate agents, we don't get paid unless you buy a house. And you ain't buying a house unless you got the money. So that's why we got a mortgage company, so we can find the money, right? So sometimes we can have a bank, a billion-dollar bank, say, hey, if you want this loan, we need $3,000 to throw into the pot to cover that $8,000. And then the seller who you're buying your home from, if they really want to sell that home, they might say, well, hey, how much do we need to give up to make a deal work? Miss Lacy right there at the end of last year, got a Lennar home. How much you get off that home?
32,000.
32. I thought it was like 71,000.
That was the other one, but that was without the interest buy down.
Oh, okay, because you did get the buy down too, right? So
But they did buy it down
yeah,
on
so
top
it,
of the $32,000.
it was the incentive. I think it was like almost 70 grand. So you got a discount, you got them to spend money towards closing to buy the rate down. And then they gave you like another what, 3% for closing?
Yes, and they what's the other thing they pay?
Title policy.
Yeah, that pay for title policy, and then also got a washer, dryer, and sprinkler system.
A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Because they need to sell that house, right? So closing costs can be negotiated and the seller can actually help pitch in to pay that. That's why sometimes when you're a military veteran and they say, hey, I bought a home with no money down. They did put an earnest money down. But if the seller said, hey, I want to pay all your closing costs, sometimes they get that earnest money back. That's how they got in with no money down. Okay. All right, so we talked about all the fees, and that's very important because you might get excited now that you understand how credit works and finance, and you might want to hurry up and go look at some homes. But here's the thing: you need to have a little bit of money saved up to do it. Now, on my little handout right here, I have at the bottom 2 questions. How long is the process, and will it be easy? Everybody's different. Maybe you connected with us through one of our agents. Maybe you found us on Eventbrite. Maybe you're thinking, hey, you know what? I know my credit. I need some work. So for you, it's just a matter of setting up an appointment so that we can look at where the credit's at and then kind of figure out what do we need to do to get you to the 640 or higher. And then you fall in place with the loan, and then you move on to looking at the houses. You may be someone that is already approved with the loan, but you just wanted to check us out as a company, find out, you know, if we really know what we're talking about. And because at the end of the day, there's 50,000 real estate agents out here. There's 3,200 real estate companies. You can choose whoever you want to use, right? We're just one in the midst of many out here, right? So we can only speak about what we offer as a brokerage. And you can vet us by just going on YouTube, and you'll see we got a track record of testimonies. Go to Google, look at all the 5 stars there.